I know. I've tackled this topic several times, from a few different angles. Most recently, I put out a video titled Demonizing Strength, where I went over a list of values that fascists consider to be moral, and showed how, in their desperate attempt to be as anti-fascist as possible, left anarchists tend to adopt the inverse values of the fascists. This makes absolutely no sense, by the way. Just because fascists value strength, discipline, or virility doesn't mean that those values are exclusively fascist, but that you have a moral obligation to pursue weakness, indulgence, or impotency. Whenever a libertarian socialist like our old buddy Vosh here makes the claim that a liberal advocating for order is fascistic, this is exactly the kind of contrarian brain rot he's clinging onto.
We're a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often...
Okay, you know how the most annoying people on Twitter like to say that liberalism is the moderate wing of fascism? This is what they mean, and they're correct.
Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest.
So this is like unironically fascistic rhetoric. It's no different to what the right did with BLM.
Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or
fascism. Sorry, right here, clear as day. We are fully doing the scratch a liberal thing right now.
Nonetheless, I'm not fully satisfied with my previous attempts to answer the question, why does the left view everything as fascism? And so I'm going to put the topic to bed once and for all. There's a Twitter account aptly named Everything is Fascism, which outlines how, well, everything is fascist, at least according to these activists. It's all the usual nonsense we've seen time and time again. Cottagecore is fascist. Tattoos are fascist. Calling someone a moron is fascist. Liberal feminism is fascist. Distrusting media is fascist. TERFs are fascist. Harry Potter's fascist. Not wanting to see people injecting drugs on the subway is fascist. Golf is fascist. Sargon's company is fascist. The military defending people is fascist. Holding your hand up is fascist. Hometowns are fascist. Superheroes are fascist. Dieting is fascist. Mount Rushmore is fascist. Theory of the mind is fascist. Not being allowed to make baseless accusations of genocide is fascist. Cinema is fascist. Not befriending giant bugs that want to kill you is fascist. Aesthetics are fascist. Sunglasses are fascist. Tradwives are fascist. Being Catholic is fascist. Liking dogs is fascist. Moving to Florida is fascist. Thomas the Tank Engine is fascist. Disney World's fascist. Lecterns are fascist. Bow ties are fascist. You know what? I actually love this account. The last time I did a drive-by collage like this, there was no centralized location to grab all of the retard proclaims random thing as fascism takes. So, why does this happen so often? Why are leftoids so hell-bent on calling anything they don't like fascism? I mean, yeah, a few rightoids have latched onto the trend as well, calling the Democrats fascist, or international organizations fascist, or communists fascist, and that is just as stupid. But it is overwhelmingly leftoids who do this, and it's been happening for a while. Orwell famously commented on this exact phenomenon back in his day, where the word fascist had become concept creeped to the point of uselessness. I think I finally know why we've been in this situation for a while now, though it's going to take going down a few rabbit holes to explain. In my previous video on being indigenous, I briefly discussed the concept of political mythology. A political myth is a story that people tell each other, which serves to justify their continued existence within a united polity. In that video, I gave the example of the Roman political myth, Romulus and Remus and the Wolf Mother, as well as the American political myth, George Washington and the Revolutionary War, as two very different examples, to show that it doesn't actually matter if the myth is true or false. What matters is that it provides justification for the society to exist. The post-World War II political myth of the countries that make up the liberal world order is defined very similarly to those left anarchists who have simply chosen to be the opposite of whatever fascism is, no matter how stupid that is in practice. The very fact that we call it the post-war world means we set the starting point for that paradigm at World War II. In this view, the Nazis are the ultimate evil. Not without good reason, obviously, but we have pegged them solidly in place in the final, most evil position possible on the moral scale. This means that all things Nazi must be the most evil that can ever possibly exist. There can never be a greater evil than the Nazis, and we can also never admit that anything remotely positive about them ever existed. Both of these statements are false, but they're an optics nightmare to explore intellectually. If you talk to some progressive-minded people, and certainly most socialists, you'll find that a lot of them have a disdain for the concept of good and evil. They'll say that's just the old, oppressive, moralistic, traditional nonsense that we need to shake off in order to be truly free. Good and evil almost sounds trite when you look at it through a modernist lens, you know? But despite this, these people absolutely behave as if good and evil exists. They've simply changed the names for these concepts. Instead of good and evil, they say leftist and fascist. And they use these words as if they're speaking about morality, not politics. The more good you are, the more left you are. The more evil, the more Nazi. Fascism has become a word to describe evil for people who think they're too sophisticated for the concept of evil, but they still find it very useful. Additionally, in my previous video on the flaws of liberalism, I pointed out that liberalism and socialism shares values and stated goals. They're both aiming at freedom and equality. It doesn't really matter that socialism never actually achieves these things, because we're talking about the realm of theory here. The reason you see so many socialists proclaim themselves as the inheritors of the liberal project, claiming that they will be the ones to fulfill the false promises of liberalism, is because while liberals and socialists differ on method quite a bit, to the point that they're often enemies, they do have some common goals. This is why socialists will often attempt to browbeat liberals and sometimes libertarians into compliance with moral questioning. The socialist will say something like, "You're a liberal, right? You like freedom and democracy and equality, right? Well, I like those things too, and I want more of them than you, so why aren't you moving leftward into my position?" Every time I've personally had a conversation with a socialist who actually recognizes me as a liberal, they've always used this tactic. They always say something like, "You should be on my side. You can't be a centrist. Why aren't you with me? Don't you want to be the good guy?" Or, "Don't you think you have a responsibility to push social justice with your platform?" With the assumption that because I'm a liberal and they're a leftist, they can pipeline me down to their position using moral posturing. It's the main reason I created this meme a few years ago, to show just how fed up with it I was. Yeah, that was me. And this happens to everyone who's a liberal, or a normie, or a centrist, or apolitical. For example, a lot of the radicals who have moved into middle management positions in various government offices, or private companies, or universities have done so using this method. They didn't capture these institutions with violence, and they didn't earn their way there with merit. They appealed to the shared morality. They said, "You're a racist and a sexist. Look at how discriminatory your organization is." And those well-meaning people in the organization, not wanting to be a racist or a sexist, opened the gates and allowed them in. They didn't understand how they were racists or sexists, but because they believed themselves to be good people, and they saw that the complaints were coming from people who historically have been the victims of racism and sexism, people who were holding shiny new gender studies degrees that surely gave them some level of expertise in the subject, well, the right thing to do would be to listen to them, right? And that's how we got these DEI HR departments that everyone fears so much. A quick recap before we go any further. What I've just described to you are 3 different points from 3 of my previous videos. 1. The post-World War II political myth that defined fascism as the ultimate evil. 2. The socialist view of liberals as people who will necessarily radicalize into socialists, as they share the same moral code. 3. The socialist and sometimes the progressive view of nearly everything not explicitly them as fascist. What ties these 3 points together is the idea that anything that outwardly appears to be neither socialist nor fascist is simply an incomplete thought, an unfinished equation, and in the final analysis, it will shake out to either be socialist or fascist. There is no other possible position. It's good or evil, leftist or fascist. Now, it's true that radicals of all stripes kind of think this way. This isn't exactly unique to socialists. Libertarians view liberals, conservatives, socialists, fascists, monarchists, all as different flavors of collectivism. Christian theocrats view all the various non-Christians as heathens. Islamists view all the various non-Muslims as kafir. It's always easier to view the various different groups who aren't you as if they're all the same thing, especially if you're following strict ideological programming. But there is a bit more to it than that, at least in this specific case. Kraut did an excellent video years ago on the Italian phrase, me ne frego, which roughly translates to I don't give a damn or I don't give a fuck. I really do recommend you watch Kraut's video, as I'm going to be covering a different aspect of the phrase me ne frego than he did. Me ne frego was the motto of the Italian Blackshirts, the paramilitary wing of Mussolini's National Fascist Party. It's considered far more vulgar in Italian than it is in English, even more so than I don't give a fuck. It was a phrase you definitely would not utter in polite company. When the Blackshirts adopted the phrase, it took on several meanings. Firstly, it showed that they didn't care about vulgarity. They didn't care about social norms. They quite literally did not give a fuck about what you thought of them. The word menefregismo is directly translated as indifference. Secondly, it was also used to express the bravery of the fascist militias. Blackshirts would write me ne frego on the bandages of their injured comrades, the meaning of which was not just to promote some necessary stoicism, but rather a devotion to violence for its own sake. It was a statement. Violence was their primary mode of politics, not debate. Thirdly, and most importantly for our purposes today, it was used philosophically to describe the fascist attempt to carve out their own destiny within the Enlightenment paradigm. Even back in the 1920s, political theorists were aware that socialists positioned themselves as the inheritors of the liberal project, as the fulfillers of the liberal promises. They knew that the two groups made the same moral appeals. The fascist solution to this problem was to reject the entire pipeline and simply say, I don't care if you find me or my ideas immoral, me ne frego. Consequently, various socialist movements began to view the liberals a little bit differently. Before they were considered inevitable converts, it was just a matter of time and education, as the moral intuitions that made a person a liberal would eventually also make them a socialist. But after me ne frego, socialists would come to view liberals who reject being pushed off of their liberal positions by virtue of their shared moral foundations with the socialist, instead as hidden fascists. The reason for this is that the liberal would have to appeal to a different morality than the socialist in order to remain consistent and not be pipelined, due to those inherent contradictions within liberalism. Valuing this other moral code over the assumed shared moral code necessarily means at some point simply saying, I don't care, I'm valuing something different, as a reply to the socialist's moral judgment, which marks the liberal as a crypto-fascist. Now that you understand this, that clip of Vosh calling Biden a fascist for appealing to order rather than freedom and equality hits a whole lot differently.
Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or
Fascism. Sorry. Right here. Clear as day. We are fully doing the scratch a liberal thing right now.
There is, of course, a huge, obvious, gaping flaw in this logic. Not everyone who says, I don't care, I don't follow your morality, and so I don't accept your moral prescriptions is a fascist, actually. Libertarians regularly say, I don't care about your moral demand that I give up my hard-earned wealth to the state to help the poor. Leave me alone. Conservatives regularly say, I don't care about your moral demand that I give up my traditions in the name of liberation and equality. Liberals who have any sense, aka liberals who aren't progressives, regularly say, I don't care if my free speech rights, or my gun rights, or my right of free association, or my property rights, or any other civil rights are impeding your socialist revolution. There's many good reasons normal people would simply say, I don't care. But socialist ideology is such that there is no other explanation. To them, it's all menefrego. It's all fascism. We are at the point where any exclamation of I don't care is itself considered fascist. I've seen lefties online say that libertarians are fascist for rejecting the left's call for inclusion, interconnectedness, and community, and saying, I don't care, I want my life to be private, separate, and individualistic. I've personally debated many lefties, a lot of them on Twitter, but several on stream, who have used the same tactic on me. I remember specifically I was debating a lefty on Food Shop stream. She asked me if I thought I was doing anything immoral by being attracted to or having sex with trans women, as she viewed it as objectifying and demeaning, and she was making a moral judgment on me for this. She was saying, well, you're a liberal, don't you think you're objectifying these poor women? I simply told her no, I didn't, and I don't care about her moral judgment of my private life. She immediately went down that progressive checklist, first saying that I needed to educate myself on the topic, and later saying that I lacked morality and I was a crypto-fascist, simply because I wouldn't be browbeaten into her position through her progressive shaming. I also had a private debate with a lefty friend of mine in DMs, where I made the point that while something like Helldivers or Starship Troopers might be a parody of what the creators think is fascism, at least from that progressive media literacy point of view, the right-wingers who play the game or enjoy the movie, and genuinely enjoy the aesthetics and values of the so-called fascists, don't care if they're being critiqued or made fun of. This lefty friend of mine went on to say, that's concerning then, lol, it's Mussolini's menefrego. And it's not just random internet retards saying this. Probably the most high-profile real-life case of this was back in 2018, where Melania Trump wore a jacket saying, I don't really care, do you? Printed on the back. A whole bunch of lefty outlets began to call Melania a crypto-fascist for using that slogan. There was even a short period of time where the GigaChad meme was considered fascist. It's way too popular now. But originally, the online left would paint GigaChad as a fascist because he was the modern embodiment of the I don't care attitude. Like, just imagine it. There's a soy-filled leftoid screaming, oh my god, don't you know that being racist is bad? And then there's a GigaChad just staring at him saying, yes and? Where the progressive expects you to agree with his morality, and then have some wishy-washy debate where you limp-wristedly justify why you should be allowed to be racist if it's bad. The GigaChad is simply saying, of course I'm racist. Racism is good. It is the ultimate menefrego. And it's fucking hilarious. To their credit, the leftist analysis of this isn't exactly wrong. There is certainly a small but growing number of legitimate fascists on the internet who are becoming emboldened by the normies, the conservatives, and even some liberals beginning to blanket reject the shared morality of progressives and socialists. We're beginning to see these people resurface and claim that they don't care if you think they're immoral for denying the Holocaust or something. But overwhelmingly, this rejection of that shared morality is not actually coming from real fascists. It's coming from normal people who are simply tired of being browbeat. They're tired of seeing blatant political messaging in all of their entertainment, where what they choose to consume for leisure is judging them for not towing the line. They're tired of seeing diversity and sensitivity training at work and school. They're tired of tiptoeing around everyone they know in real life, so that nobody can ever be offended. They're tired of vast swaths of what used to be normal interactions between men and women being discouraged, stigmatized, or even criminalized. They're tired of being told what to think and speak and feel by people who believe they are more morally superior because they are more left-leaning. I'll leave you with one final example of what I mean. The reason progressives viewed the 2019 Joker movie as a fascist ballad is not only because of white male rage.
The thing that this movie is really about is white male rage, white male rage, white male rage. Joker.
It's also because of this scene in the meme it became.
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
Just like GigaChad, this is a modern menefrego, from the leftist point of view. It doesn't matter that in the movie, it's an expression used out of hopelessness and exasperation by the victim of a decaying capitalist system, a theme that you think a socialist would appreciate. As a meme on the internet, it's used to express that same exasperation, but directed at the left-wing morality that we've all been living under. You can't make a racist or a sexist or a homophobic or a transphobic joke because that means you're a bigot. You can't critique migrants coming in or taxes going up or rampant drug use emboldened by harm reduction policies. That means you're evil. You can't question the efficacy of diversity initiatives or affirmative action. That means you're a Nazi. And eventually, the normies just broke. They began to reject the progressive social paradigm we've been living under for the past 20 years, slowly pushing things leftward over time. They simply began saying, yes, those racist jokes are funny, and I'm tired of pretending they're not. They simply began saying, I don't care. And yes, to answer all of the cliches, this is why Gamergate happened, this is why Brexit happened, and this is why Trump happened. What unites all of the examples that I've given you today is the blanket rejection of that shared progressive socialist morality. It's normal, everyday people saying, no, I don't want things to move more leftward, actually. And I don't care if you view me as immoral for rejecting your political project. This new menefrego, if it's even appropriate to call it that, isn't some proud declaration of fascism. It's a frazzled, worn-out sigh, an exasperated pleading saying, enough! Leave me alone. This is why leftists will always view the liberals' desire for privacy, the libertarians' desire for rugged individualism, and the conservatives' desire for order and familiarity as fascist. Not because they actually are, but because when push comes to shove, they're all willing to be viewed as evil from the socialist point of view, rather than acquiesce to their demands, if it means that they get their privacy or individualism or order or familiarity. Basically, they all view their own values as more important than socialist ones, which is a completely normal thing to do. And so, the socialist has to view the normal as fascist. The reason the left views everything not them as fascism is because anything that is not them, anything that they don't control, can and will be used to critique them. Critiquing the left means questioning its morality. Questioning the left's morality means, in their view, sliding down that leftist-fascist moral scale towards the fascist side. Anytime you say, I don't care if you hate me, I don't care about your moral browbeating, just leave me alone, the only part of it they hear is, I don't care. The only part of it they hear is menefrego.